stuck between a libertarian and a Republican? Welcome to Publitarian Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you again with another episode of Publitarian Podcast, and I'm very excited about this episode because I've got a special guest on. Why don't you tell us about the guest, Mr. Announcer Guy?
And now, Publitarian Studios is proud to present our first interview of 2020. This guest is a citizen journalist, proud patriot, free thinker, and a natural health advocate. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vegan Patriot.
That's right, I'm very happy to have with me today the one, the only Vegan Patriot. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is my first time ever, so you get to help me out with that, and I get to pop my my podgenity.
Yes, popping the podgenity. Everybody always remembers their first, from what I understand.
Yeah, this is a cool one because I get to have the whole music intro and everything too, so I'm special, right?
Yes, very special, because nobody else has ever gotten a musical intro.
Really? Are you for real?
No, I'm not for real.
Oh, you asshole.
Sorry, that's one of my shticks on the show, is everybody gets a musical intro, but it's a musical intro, like, of their choice.
Well,
It's
yeah,
like
that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's only for you. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, like this specific song or introduction. It was
Yes.
my
It is.
aesthetic in mind.
Oh, yeah, no, that is just for you. Like, that was composed just for you.
Great.
And
Yeah,
I'm
how
not
many
using it
pop
for anybody
punkers?
else.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, how many pop punkers are really, like, on Politigram? I don't know. A lot of them want to just claim, like, the whole punk aesthetic, I noticed. So,
Yes.
I'm
Well,
like
I don't
the
know.
real
From what I
Politigram.
understand, conservatism is the new punk.
Yeah, it should be, though. It's pretty funny, too, because, like, with all the ex-burners and stuff, which you know I am, I think the burners just wanted to be rebels, and the ones that really, like, woke up, they're still rebels.
Yeah, because, like, that's in their nature. And, I mean, it's actually in, like, American nature. Like, I mean, this is how the country was birthed. We're basically rebels.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, but most people don't even remember the whole purpose of the origins of this country, which is, I don't know that much in depth, but the more I learn, the more it scares me how much we weren't taught.
Right. We've been taught either a very whitewashed version of history or extreme ignorance, and that America was like this, oppressive force.
Right.
And obviously you have Patriot in your name, so I'm assuming you have some kind of patriotism towards the United States of America.
Yeah, it's really crazy because I kind of really recently, within the last year or so, really paid attention to the actual meaning of patriot. Like, you have, I started talking to you and Undead and Undead Night of the Undead Patriot.
Another Publitarian favorite here.
Yes, he's freaking awesome. I love his content too, because I'm kind of like a weird little Barbie goth chick, so the horror aesthetics are like one of my favorites, and I haven't seen another account with that until his. But you see the Patriot all over, and I think I just kind of looked at it and didn't really think too hard about it, but like, yeah, dude, like, Patriots are basically the exact same people who are getting called white nationalists right now. And ethno-nationalists or whatever they're trying to call minorities who are nationalists, whatever the left is
Yes.
talking
Black
about.
white supremacists as well. Yes.
Yeah, white supremacists. Yes, it doesn't matter if you're actually white, but how dare you like your country? Because if you like your country, I mean, you're pretty much a racist, right?
Well, yeah, if you like a country that was founded on slavery and oppression, then of course you're a Nazi and a white nationalist. I mean, come on.
Yeah, dude. Actually, I watched what was it? The first time I really like witnessed that, I was watching somebody's video from the free speech event in DC, and this girl, she was mixed or black. I think Alicia Powell. Do you know who that is? I don't know if you've seen her on Instagram.
That one's not ringing a bell.
Yeah, well, she was interviewing some people in DC, and I think it was this speech event. It doesn't matter, but there was a bunch of I think they were transgender people with fans, right? And so she
Mm-hmm.
found this kid, and she was interviewing him, and it was going okay until she was like talking to him about, you know, country pride, essentially, and he was pretty much bringing up the whole white nationalism thing with Trump, and she's like, "Well, I'm not white, and I voted for Trump," and it was really crazy because like in this video, it's a. Do you know who Folklore Americana is? Though, have you seen any of his
Y-
videos? Like Laura
yes.
Loomer's videographer and stuff like
Yes. Uh
that.
huh.
Yeah. So this is one of his. I don't know if it was one of his productions or one of the people that worked with him, but these people, like these trans people, just like ultimately like swarmed her because the kid couldn't answer the question. Like, I'm black and I voted for Trump, and he didn't really know how to reframe his answer at that point. So they just kind of took over, and they like fanned her, like they circled her with these fans, and that was like one of the first times I'm like, literally, like, how do you even justify that? You obviously are not interested in reality if you're going to be like calling someone a white nationalist, and then it's obvious right there the kid couldn't answer it because nobody can. She wasn't white.
Yeah. Exactly. Most of the time, when confronted with truth or facts or data, just that side of the aisle will fall apart because all they have is like emotion and rhetoric and
Yeah,
what TV has told them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and everybody was a victim of it, especially in my age group. So it's pretty interesting. The more I've just pretty much had anecdotal experiences where I've just kind of, when I started to get kind of sick, I wasn't really going outside as much, and I was kind of just realizing like, oh my God, all I have really energy for is, to go work and try to just support myself. And then I would go home and I'd be sick in bed, couldn't sleep, and I would just watch these videos, and I would just kind of watch stuff, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And I think some people, they're genuinely just overworked and exhausted, and they don't have a chance to really do any research or dig into something.
No, not at all.
So
That's like the catch-22 of like how our society is formed right now. Everybody is overworked and like overwhelmed, and so whatever quick little sound bite they get from media, that's usually what they run
mhm.
with.
Well, it sounds credible. It's like, even like, I think Forbes, they've been posting stuff that like they don't even verify all their sources. It sounded like I've heard critique about them as well. But like when
I
you
have
really
to.
think about it, like Forbes has a good reputation, right? Like you think when you're reading an article that it's going to be thorough, verified. I think they're, for the most part, they are, but I'm pretty sure I heard something about them too. But yeah, it's just, you have to really dig, because that's the whole problem. Like the number one thing that got me sucked in is like, why is the media hiding stuff so much? And when I got into the free speech stuff with Just Mediocre, I did something with him in Texas. And when I started to get more directly involved, like, and paid more attention to stuff, like, you have the personal experiences. That was my first time ever like going out and doing an interview, and like just kind of witnessing for myself kind of some of the insanity. And I'm a really neutral person. So San Francisco Thought Criminal, you know who he is, right?
Yes.
So he is the one who initially reached out to me, and this is what happened was I'm vegan, obviously, haha, vegan patriot.
What?
Like, and I'm not a troll. I don't know why people think I'm trolling about that, but you can be vegan and be into your country. So that's like confusing to me too.
Well, it's
But
like this persona. When people think of Patriot, they think of like this gun-toting, meat-eating.
well, and I think I've seen enough vegan activists that are not interested in teaching, and this goes anywhere. Like, people are so invested in their cause, they just genuinely don't want to see that someone else might not understand it, or that they don't understand it for non-malicious reasons. Like, I think a lot of vegans are just convinced that like you have to just attack people, and this goes for so many different things, but veganism is a corner that I've obviously experienced plenty in. And you see them just like attacking people because they're, to me, with everything, I strike more libertarian with a lot of things. Obviously, like especially social stuff, because you can't make people feel a certain way. They have to learn it, they have to understand it, they have to agree with you. And You're not
Yes.
literally going to get the
Yes.
whole world on your page. So I don't think it's helping anyone by attacking people about things that they feel differently on for whatever reason. So I think vegans have a problem where they're just like really comfortable doing that with people.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Well, I mean, it's even like made so many memes of like, like the woman chasing the man down the street, and she's like out of breath, like, "Ah, I'm glad I caught you." And he's like, "What do you need?" She's like, "I just wanted to tell you I'm vegan."
oh my god, yes. Yes. Well,
Um,
I almost like even didn't put it in my Instagram name because like I was like, well, that's identity politics, right? Essentially. But then on the other hand, I'm kind of like, well, it's still kind of a gotcha. And I think it's making people pay a little bit of attention because there's like no, like for me, it's obviously way more about veganism, but
no, it
the
does. It's like
censorship, the
it's made me
reason,
like pay attention. Like I was like, vegan patriot, interesting, and
what
I'm
is
gonna find
that?
out.
Who,
Yeah, and it's funny because like, uh, what you're saying is like you're not really, like you said, you're not really fitting in that box because you have not like preached to me about veganism not once. And like
mm-mm,
you haven't called me like a dirty son of a bitch for like eating meat or anything.
absolutely not. I used to love meat. And then I really got into actually because well, I have my degree in vet tech, so I'm an animal person. Obviously, I grew up riding horses. I've literally been around dogs, cats, horses, and other species like most of my entire life. So I'm a big animal just compassion advocate at the minimum.
Hmm.
But I always used to eat steak. I always used to. I was like really a big steak fanatic actually, and it took me forever before I really got the vegan and the nutrition thing down. And I was pescatarian for a while,
Hmm.
which is just fish, and then dairy too. But when I started to really get into like, God, I think it was like I was about to graduate, and like we've talked about my little white chihuahua, and this is gonna sound pathetic, but she reminds me of a little piglet. Okay, and so I started seeing videos on factory farming with pigs, and that was when I started to
Like
literally
Food Inc. or
physically.
stuff like that.
I couldn't like okay. I tried to go get bacon. Like I loved bacon. I literally saw my dog in my head. Okay, like after watching too many of those videos, like
Gotcha.
little pink belly, like white, like precious little squealing little creatures. And then I did more research that was not just off my emotions, and it's like pigs are really freaking smart, and it's like that is so disgusting to me that that whole world is like people. I mean, I don't think people want to think about how bad it is, and that's when I started to talk to SF because I noticed there was like a trend in censorship with vegans and conservatives, and I'm not even kidding you. That's literally like that was the lie that I brought together was
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. And if you look, like I post and I delete, not delete, but I archive a lot because I just feel like I spam people too much with stuff they don't care about. But I used to post like whatever I would find, and I still will on occasion, but it just hasn't been my track lately. I'm pretty much set with how I'm set with how I feel about factory farming. But yeah, like pretty much there's like ag gag laws, which the one thing about Cory Booker I liked, he brought that up a lot, which is basically like, okay, so here's the thing. Morally, personally, I'm not going to be upset if a vegan activist goes into a factory and like steals an animal because like that's just how I feel.
Well,
But
I
I'm not
wouldn't be
also going
either,
to like,
but it's and that's funny about that because yeah, like I see the faces on these animals, but I mean, I still want to eat bacon, I still want to eat steak too, and I guess that's the disconnect. But yeah, if you like show me, hey, this is gonna be your steak tomorrow, I'm like,
mhm,
oh,
yeah,
don't
here,
do
well,
that, poor little cow.
literally. And I
I'm
mean,
gonna
like,
lose all my Republican followers now.
no, you have a heart. It's totally cool to have a heart. I actually think we were speaking of rebel stuff. Like it's a little bit of a rebellious thing to have a heart in the conservative movement because
Yeah,
they're painted as such like, you know,
facts
I don't
do.
know,
Facts don't care about your feelings.
right. Ben Shapiro.
I'm
Ben
gonna get us on
Shapiro.
another rabbit trail. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Feelings don't care about your facts either, apparently. Look at the left. They literally don't care about your facts.
Right.
Um so
Yeah. Good
scary.
point.
Ugh, it works both ways. But Yeah, no, pretty much. I just was like, I realized that like there was a suppression of information in general, and that just in it doesn't matter really what it's about. It's like why why is stuff that if I'm a big free market person, so essentially like if most people like you're telling me right now, if most people were to see how these animals were treated, many would really at least try to have like a meatless Monday or I don't think most people are cold-hearted assholes, but like you said, there's a disconnect because we don't see it. So, what is there to protect about an industry that is causing so much of that pain? That like, if the public actually had an idea, and not in the sense where it's like, okay, I feel this way about abortion too. I'm really all about education, and I've seen plenty of videos that people do not want to see just pop up on their feeds. Okay, it
Yes.
could be the whole abortion process as a video. I've seen those videos. It made me go from pro choice to pro life. So they're effective and they're important, as are, factory farming footage videos. But not everybody wants that to just pop up right in their face
Yeah, see,
immediately.
like I'm one of those too. Like, and yeah, I would consider myself pro-life as well, but I don't want to see that on my feed. I don't know. It's just
Right.
like one of those things that like it is effective. I get it, but like I don't want to see that. But I
No,
mean,
and there's a fine line between like I think educating people and then like pushing things, and you have to know where to stop, or people don't listen at all.
so you've mentioned factory farming and like the industry in itself. When would you be okay, or would you be okay with eating meat? Like, what if it was just a cow raised on the farm and, it's reached the end of its life and we're having steak? Like, well, I mean, I know this sounds absurd, but you know what I'm saying? You're calling it like a factory
No,
and
it doesn't.
industry. Like, yeah,
It does not sound absurd at all to me. And like I mentioned my condition obviously. So to me, like at the end of the day, I don't trust labels. I don't trust our government almost at all, to be honest at this point. I really like don't trust the government. Um
you're going to do fine on this podcast.
I mean, that's what's so funny. It's like pretty much unless you really do trust the government, then you're considered like something that's not acceptable by the mainstream world, right? So
Right.
I think that's where we need to get a lot of people involved. You have people like that are kind of just they just don't trust the government, and if they're smart, then they go from moving from Bernie Sanders people to somewhere on the right to some variant, right? You would hope.
You're
Um,
right.
so I was in Ohio for the summer because I get really sick in extreme temperatures, and I went to go see a specialist. And so I was with my family where I'm from a really, really famous, politically famous college town. So, it's an interesting place. But I went to Michigan to go see one of my girlfriends, who's actually from Arizona, but she moved to Michigan. So I went to go see her, and she is somewhere by like it was like literally the middle of nowhere. I had no reception, and the hotspots were hardly even working. But whatever. They were in the wilderness. Okay, that's all I know.
Right.
And I drove there, and it was like 6 hours from where I'm from in Ohio. And she was like, she's like, you want to? I made some sausages, and I was like, okay, like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, well, just he killed some deer out back, and it died immediately. And I was like, fuck it, okay.
Okay.
And so I had some of her venison sausage, and it was delicious. And she also, this is the whole part where I come in with like nutrition and sustainability.
Hmm.
Um, I'm 1,000,000% like we are the apex predator. Okay, like I'm not going to dispute that with everybody, and I'm not going to say that my diet is like the way that it doesn't. I mean, there's problems with everything, and if people just genuinely don't understand nutrition as it is, and the more I got into veganism, the more I was like, holy crap, like this is alarming. Why don't people understand how to feed themselves?
Right.
So the self sustainability thing, hens, because I had a lot of clients when I was here when I worked at my job. I would go in home. I would sometimes I had medical clients. Sometimes I just had people that just wanted their pets taken care of. But there were quite a few people, and I'm in Phoenix, and it's urban in Phoenix. It's not like it's not rural,
Right.
and there's so many people that have chickens and hens, and they're like they have coops, and they make it work. And I think I haven't had the money to get started on anything like that, but that's something that I would definitely check out because I like the city. So I'm kind of that asshole that's like, oh yeah, we should all take care of ourselves. And then I'm like, yeah, but I really like skyscrapers and cars everywhere.
And
So
Wi-Fi connections.
yeah, I gotta either grow out of that or I don't know, figure it out. But you can have hens in your backyard. And dude, the problem with factory farming is those hens, particularly the dairy industry, is so sickening. Actually, I think the dairy industry is, if not at least as bad, it's somewhat worse than the meat industry because you think those animals are like safer because they're not killed immediately. Oh my God, no, it's like no, it's awful. And the hens, they are forced to produce and they're bred to be able to produce, but it's not like the way they're supposed to be. Tons of eggs that they aren't really biologically supposed to be producing. So
So it's like
if you see
giving a
these
human
people,
female in vitro.
honestly, like over and over again, I really don't actually know exactly the science behind it, but these hens essentially they will develop like serious diseases. And I've only known this because like some of the activists I've followed, like they'll take these hens to the vet and they don't live very long after they take them out of these facilities. And it's really just heartbreaking actually because at least they get to live like a little bit of a normal life, but they'll come out of these like just pale and like have no color. And I think hens fight with each other if you leave them in like the same area for too long.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much they're just genetically abused and then they die really early if they don't die early anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just really sad. But if you have your own hens and you let them live life and they're in your backyard just being fucking hens, like whatever, eat their eggs. They're, duh. Like, why not?
Right.
And I think
And
most of
deer
like
out in the wild is okay.
yes. Okay, so my number one thing is if I trusted labels, I would probably do the whole grass-fed thing because I did that for a while. But I believe, and don't quote me on this exact statistic, but I believe to be labeled organic, it only has to be 51% organic. I don't know what the fuck that means,
Oh,
but it's like not
I didn't
really
know
like
that.
there are a ton of studies on how labeling organic stuff like because I'm a millennial so yeah basically from a lot of studies that I read like and just in my experience and kind of just getting into the whole nutrition thing it's mostly just a label. It's mostly a fad. It's mostly a marketing grab. And a lot of the cage free stuff, it's just, oh my God, I've seen cage free facilities and oh, they're not pretty. They're not outside. These hens do not get to just live their lives. These animals in cage free environments, doesn't matter what species it is, cage free just means they're literally walking around in their own slop and shit most of the time. And they'll have all these infections and it's just disgusting.
So this veganism is a two-part thing for you. It's birthed from a distrust of the government, but it's also birthed from I don't want to see these animals harmed like this in this like horrible industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And with my condition, I'm in so much pain all the time. Like, I used to foster animals. I mean, I feel like this is one of the few ways I can kind of do my part and just try to put less pain into the world. So it's definitely, absolutely, it's a little bit of both for sure.
Oh, and so a little bit behind the scenes for my listeners. She's mentioned her condition a couple times, and we're going to get into that right now. I typically, when I do these interviews, I do them fresh, and I haven't even talked with the person that much. But Vegan Patriot, I have. So we will backtrack and talk about your condition if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So, what is your condition?
Okay, so I have a form of dysautonomia and like basically your autonomic system. What I have specifically, it's an umbrella of different things. Your autonomic system is parasympathetic, your sympathetic fight or flight,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So my condition particularly under the blanket of dysautonomia. So dys in the clinical world means, it's not functioning, it's not
Mm-hmm.
working. So I have a dysfunction in my autonomic system essentially. And there can be a variety of different conditions under that. I have one called postural orthostatic tachycardia.
Whoa.
So yeah, right, exactly. It's a mouthful, and even when I've talked to people that know POTS, which is literally just the acronym, I'll call it postural orthostatic tachycardia and they'll give me a blank stare. But I've literally had people where like if I go like, POTS, they'll go, "Oh, I think I've heard of that." Like
Oh.
it's the same thing. It's it's literally the same thing.
Okay.
So,
So it's where your immune system is attacked and your parasympathetic and your sympathetics don't know what's going on, basically.
well, so I'm actually not diagnosed with autoimmune. However, so this is the other thing too. A lot of people with my condition, specifically POTS, we don't all have it for the same reasons. It's a condition because it's not a disease. It's not something I can really. I mean, in some cases, if there's genetic problems, then yes. But some people literally like it's like Lyme disease, like something kind of happens once you get bitten or you have it. It's not always that case though. It's that's part of the problem. That's part of the issue with society getting it. But on top of the fact that doctors really don't, they've only very recently started to put energy into understanding it, period. Because I've been diagnosed since I was 17. I was told my blood pressure would never go too high. I was told I could have as much salt as possible. I was told I could grow out of it. I was told, I mean, nobody really understood it. And they're only just now, they called it rare for a long time. And I knew it wasn't because the symptoms are just, you can have a variety of different symptoms. The best example I can really give is if you imagine when you're walking out into the sun. Now, I don't think I have this happen to an extreme extent, but I do think this does happen because you notice, you see my account, I'm always wearing a hat or sunglasses. And I've had people that are like, "Oh, I thought you just like that was like a fashion thing." Okay, whatever, maybe a little bit, but not really. I realized my headaches, they just kind of stopped being insane when I would wear sunglasses and a hat. And I love
Oh.
being outside. I love being in the sunshine. I have really bad depression.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that. I just thought you were popping some kind of fashion thing too.
Everybody thinks, yeah. So that's the whole, it's called invisible illness, right? Like, but imagine, because especially when most people look at me, they're like, "You literally look fine." And I'm like, okay, but literally, like, my whole internal system just, it does what it wants when it wants. So I'm not fine, but okay. Um,
Yeah, and so many diseases are like that, and I hate it that people are like that. Like I've interviewed a type 1 diabetic on my show, and it's
yep.
like totally different world from type 2. Like it's
Oh,
an
yeah.
autoimmune thing. They look totally fine,
Mhm.
but they're like fighting for their life each day, you know?
So my girlfriend in Ohio that I grew up riding horses with, actually, yeah, she has type 1 diabetes and she has POT syndrome, but she
Oh,
is,
damn.
yeah, so she can't live by herself. And she's fortunate because her parents have a very large, savings. They make good money.
Hmm.
So she's taken care of, but the majority of people,
Right, wouldn't be able to do that.
mhm.
So this is a chronic illness then, and it's just something that you have to live with, and doctors are still finding out about it.
Yeah, and I would say maybe within like the last 5 or so years, I've started hearing people be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that," but they still really don't know much past that they've heard of it. And
No, that's where I am until we started talking about it. I didn't know what this was either.
and that's really so scary because especially with the fact that like there wasn't a lot of funding or research put into it as much as there is now because more people are presenting symptoms. So in general, like there's all sorts of different chronic illness, but like doctors with POTS specifically, they've very recently started to separate the types of POTS, I think. And maybe they did a long time ago, but it was never like, "Oh God, you don't even want to know." The reason I got into anti-socialism directly relates to my healthcare. Um, and when I lost my dad's insurance off Obamacare, so I can't bash Obamacare too much. I understand the problems with it, like obviously. So there's that. But as someone who really would have been, I probably wouldn't have gotten as far as I had gone without having my dad's health coverage because once I got onto state, that was really when a lot of my problems became impossible because state coverage was so bad. I was given a specialist who was not a part of the Dysautonomia Network. I was pretty much throwing money at someone who would make me wait. And this happens in even good clinics too. You go, you wait forever.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some girls that like these people are going all over the country, or they're coming from other countries, because the Cleveland Clinic is actually one of the best for POTS actually. But people don't know how, and all that was out of pocket. My parents paid out of pocket like $2,500 for me to go to the specialist. Okay. But if I would have paid out of pocket in Arizona at the Mayo Clinic, it would have been 10 grand. And
Yep, that sounds right.
insane. And there's scholarships, but they're like $1,000 or $2,000. So like, if your insurance doesn't cover this, you're kind of fucked. I was given a cardiologist, and the cardiologist can, because that could be like, my heart organ itself is fine. I mean, I could really talk about this forever, so I don't want to waste everybody's time too much, but it's a very complex thing where if you don't have the right doctors with the right history and the right network, which my specialist now that I saw in Ohio, I have a portal so I can communicate with her online. But she's part of the Dysautonomia Network, which means essentially she has all these updates and research. And the guy I was given out here, he was always a year behind. I mean, he was hosting seminars, and I mean, I was in medical school. So I came to all these conclusions myself, essentially, and like literally understood my own condition, mostly due to the fact that I was in anesthesiology one day, and I was like, oh my God, like, I think I understand myself. Oh, but back to the whole example thing with the eye thing. So imagine if this is a part of your autonomic system, okay? So if you go into the sunshine, your pupils are supposed to constrict, right? Like, you don't tell them to do that. They're just supposed to.
Right.
That is just one part of your autonomic system. And I do believe that that's partially why I have such an issue in the sunlight, but I don't think it's as severe as like the example I'm giving. My blood vessels sometimes still just open and they won't shut. And it doesn't matter if I go from a cold to a hot climate, because if you go in the heat, your blood vessels automatically expand. That's just how it works. You have vasodilation. That's anybody medical kind of understands that. Everybody else, I'm probably talking a lot of mumble jumble, but that's why the extreme heat's really bad for me, because I will start to get super lethargic, and it's guaranteed I'm going to faint. So you were bringing up the cannabis thing. There are definitely circumstances where you have to be very careful with the marijuana stuff, because that will lower your blood pressure as well. But in general, like for me, if I'm sick and I'm throwing up or whatever, like I would much rather be at home, like, you know, in my bed smoking, than in a hospital getting IV fluids, because I couldn't keep anything down. So you have to understand all this stuff. And a lot of doctors, really, they're just not on a cohesive track for treatment.
Well, so many doctors they're just basically pill pushers now. And I hate that that's the reason. And I've had my own bout with dealing with doctors. We've talked about this, like my own chronic illness, and just spending thousands of dollars on doctors and them having, coming up with nothing. And,
scratching their heads like, oh, I'm sorry, like maybe you should come back in a couple months, tell me how you feel. Like, forget all these 12 side effects.
I guarantee I'm going to feel the same, except probably worse, because I'm on whatever this medicine is.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, God, I was like 15 and I was given opioid. I was put in a, what is it called? Shoot. I'm going to say heroin, and that is not what I mean. Morphine.
That's better. I mean,
they're different.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do to get by, right?
Right. Well, I don't think heroin would have been legal. But when I was 15, I was put on a morphine-induced coma because I could not stop throwing up. And I was given Percocets. I was given like everything left and right. And that was just one of the medications I tried. I was put on antipsychotics for my head pain. Like, it was obvious the more I get older and the more I pay attention. Like, a lot of these people just didn't know, and they were just like, try this. This might work. We don't know, though. That's really frightening. Like, you're changing body chemistries. You're changing people's, like, it's just, even with the whole mental health scene, which I'm a big advocate for myself, too, that one's tough, because you want to say that, like, giving people antidepressants is going to fix them, but there's so many studies even just now coming out, like what the Dayton shooter was on antipsychotics or some type of
Most of these
medication.
shooters are on
Right.
something.
So these medications that are causing all these secondary and third issues, it makes you wonder what the incentive is. Hi, sweetheart. Rosie, my kitty's on the podcast. He wants to say hello.
Oh,
Excuse you.
Rosie?
This Rosie, my little transgender kitten. He moved in with us, and we thought he was a girl, so he is like a dog, and he comes to his name. And I tried to change it, and he liked Rose.
But it's too late. It's Rosie. Here we are.
Rosie, yeah.
Okay.
No judgment here. It's okay.
No, we're in a judgment-free zone here. If you
Do
want to have
you,
a transgender cat, dude, enjoy. So speaking to this, and like I said, I've had other people on the podcast too, where I've talked about the medical community in general, like big pharma, everybody, and I think this is partly by design. Everybody wants to like have the government step in and fix everything, when I just want people to have a historical perspective and go like, when has the government ever made anything better? Like,
Right.
I get it. I know you want somebody to fix something, and you've got like Republicans on one side going, well, the free market can handle this. Just start a competing company, and then you've got people on the left going, well, the government needs to step in. And what they're not realizing is both parties are in bed with each other. Like I had a girl on
Yes.
my show one time that was talking about insulin pricing, and she was like, I don't want the government to fix my problems, but another company can't start an insulin company because they have to go through all this government like red tape to start the insulin company, and it would
Yep.
take them 20 years to do it. So we're kind of like in between a rock and a hard place in America with big pharma, with the medical community, with insurance companies. Like, I don't have any answers. I'm kind of ranting. Do you have any ideas?
No. So I've thought a lot about this quite a few times. And actually in Texas, when I did the debates with Just Mediocre, I actually had an interview that because I've just been doing so much. I have a certain amount of mental and physical energy. We're called spoonies. Okay. So if you put it like a spoon in a jar, basically, you try to pull out one spoon at a time, and like normal people have unlimited amounts of spoons, but like every activity a spoonie does, like it's kind of like we only have designated amounts of spoons. You know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? So that's where that comes from. Um, YouTube channel though that I need to work on, and I need a little break to just kind of. I want to put some good energy into it, but I had this interview with a doctor, and I'm 29, and I think he was either 28 or 29, so he was about my age, and we were talking about this, and ultimately, my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong, is pharma itself is the problem. So in my eyes, it's like you have insurance started out as a business,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, it's always been a business. They've always been for profit because that's what businesses are for and
Right.
about. Um, but the problem is pharma has continuously upped these prices, and it's like, what? Like, if you're a doctor, first and foremost, I think that doctors were incentivized. I believe there's a separate license number for doctors where they get kickbacks, and I looked this up a long time ago, so I'm not going to be like super sharp with my research citations, but I believe that doctors that are human doctors, vets don't get these kickbacks as far, at least when I was in school, they did not have this license number. But you remember back in the day, like America is one of the few countries that legally allows
Drug
advertisement
ads.
for, yes. So
I'm so sick of them. Geez,
doctors,
like every time you go to a commercial break, it's try this
well, there's
pill.
7 countries in the whole
It
world. I
cures
believe
your
it's seven
vomiting,
that are,
and the side effects are vomiting,
oh
diarrhea.
yeah. Or this what is it for hernia mesh repair, which I've had 4 hernia repairs.
Oof.
Um, yeah, and I think I have connective tissue as part of the condition for me, so we think that they're all connected to that too. But insurance, I believe, and the doctor I spoke with kind of was agreeing with this. So I really want to figure out how to get this interview up because it wasn't done like the way the other ones were done, but pretty much from what my opinion and my stance on is, doctors were given kickbacks they were incentivized, again with that word, they were incentivized to push medications on people, right? So for whatever reason, these name brands, and even my girlfriend who is a nurse at the Cleveland Clinic, she's literally been like, my doctor literally pushes the most expensive versions of these medications on people.
Oh, God.
And she's like, he'll tell me to go get a certain type of medication and I'll come back with the generic form. She's like, because it pisses me off.
Right.
So, I don't know how far, I won't say her name because I don't know any of the mechanics for that. But the point is, obviously, like, to a certain extent, there has been an incentivization for selling name brand drugs and making a profit in that, whatever, that way. So then you have insurance companies, okay? And then you have pharma. So there's 3 levels. I think there's more than just 3, but to simplify it, I believe you have the doctors, you have insurance, and then you have the pharmaceutical organization.
Uh-huh.
And then pharma, though, insurance companies are meant to cover you while still making a profit, right? That was their purpose.
Right.
That's, again, the whole business thing. However, when pharma pushes prices to the exorbitant amount that they have pushed them to, like, these insurance companies can't possibly think that they're going to make money. It's not really fair to ask them to be something. They never were charity. They were never, they weren't about that. So of course they're not going to cover things in correlation with rising costs of drugs. To me, that's like a no-brainer.
Right.
And so then you have a lot of these insurance companies that are rejecting, or for whatever purposes, these doctors are feeling frustrated because they're not getting paid now. So if you're one of these doctors, imagine, like, you have to maintain your facility. That's why a lot of vet clinics don't take, animal insurance. It's changed now since I was in school. So I know there's variations to what I'm speaking of.
And I'm starting to see them move in that direction too. And I'm like, no, you're just going to be like everybody else.
Right. Well, and the more I learn about it, the more I agree with you. At first I was like, why don't they have insurance the way they do for, but it used to be more like car insurance where you had to have your deductible.
Health insurance is not health insurance anymore. Like, they have become like little mini doctors that get to decide health things. Like, insurance is supposed to be like, if you can't afford it, like, so in a perfect world, I should be going, oh, Dr. A is this much? Well, let me go to Dr. B. Not like, what will this royal company bestow upon me that I may or may not get health care? You know what I'm saying? It should be...
Literally, though. It is. It's really scary, and it's partially why, like you said earlier, people really want the government to step in and do stuff, which is where I was at with Bernie. And to me, it didn't make sense why people were so against it, because I'm like, dude, there's people like me that need this. But then at the end of the day, you're like, okay, if the whole bureaucracy like owns our healthcare system, like, okay, I'm like 5'11" and a half, like, I'm a tall fucking girl, and I was literally like sent to the state coverage, like the doctor that they gave me, because you have to go in their network. I was listed as 5'8". Okay, like, I'm just saying, it's pretty fucking obvious I'm not 5'8". And like, that was the first thing. And this whole first visit, like, I've heard people have good doctors on their state health coverage, so it just depends. But the bottom line is, if you're depending on one entity to dole out, like you said, it's like, okay, be my savior. Like, are you gonna care enough about me to like utilize the coverage I've been paying for to take care of me in places I need?
And that's part 1 of the interview with Vegan Patriot. We had such a good conversation that it spilled way longer than any podcast episode should run, so I've broken it up into 2 episodes. So tune in here next week for episode 2 with the interview with Vegan Patriot. See you guys then.
Podcast. Copyright 2020.